everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. My name is Sesil Pir, I'm the founder of Whirling Chief. This is our second video on human-centered leadership. In the first video, I tried to set a little bit of context and talked about the unprecedented change that we're seeing in our environment. What I didn't mention is that business is actually being impacted by this in a major way. So we're also sort of thinking about what it means to work going forward. How do we define work? How do we organize, delegate, and manage it? What it means to be a leader in the future, etc. And we have some very unique developments. If you look into history, our economic, our business, our organizational models have changed vastly. And we have some interesting statistics to show us that an average life cycle of an organization, for example, dropped significantly over the years. Another interesting statistic we have is that 52% of Fortune 500 companies have disappeared since the year 2000. This is exactly why we are referring to the current era as Fourth Industrial Revolution. We acknowledge the forces of change in the environment are making traditional ways of working very irrelevant very fast. Now, we all know this, and therefore we weren't as interested in understanding what's not working. We were interested in understanding what is working and where we can learn new ideas, new philosophies, new practices. And therefore, we went to the remaining 48% of the Fortune 500 companies. And together with Stanford University, we studied their leadership behaviors. We wanted to see if there are specific mindsets and attributes at play that support their sustainable growth. And here's what we found out. For an organization to endure with sustainable growth, there are two factors in play. One is adaptability, which refers to an organization's capability in terms of adapting their processes, their practices, their policies over time. The second one is resilience, and that one refers to an organization's capacity. Now, it's about individuals' capacity to sort of deal with the change and complexity and bounce back from adversity. Now, we weren't satisfied with these results only. We wanted to understand, okay, so these are the two factors, and a lot of people suffer from capacity these days. So is there anything that we can learn from these organizations that's going to sort of support our expansion of capacity? And we found there are 5 common leadership behaviors these organizations have. There are 8 different mindsets, the kind of mindsets we don't typically see and find in our workplaces, and 8 core human attributes that support leaders becoming as positive role models in the environment. So today with this video, we're going to talk about the leadership behaviors. Here's what we learned with the leadership behaviors. The first behavior is leaders sit in many chairs. What we found is that inside these organizations, leadership as a concept is not dedicated to a few at the top. Leadership in the future also is no longer about power or status. I think we are all starting to realize we are all leaders of our own lives, of our environments, our societies, and therefore we don't need a permission to step up and do the right thing. And so these organizations that have been showing sustainable growth actually have been empowering their employees for years. They have been treating their employees as if they're a leader within an organization. The second behavior is that leaders lead themselves first. Now, these organizations understood leadership, of course, requires you to execute on something well, but also requires a lot of presence, focus, and attention. And therefore, they were sort of considering who is the right person to become a leader for our employees. If you look at traditional organizations, a lot of people get promoted from individual contributor to leadership roles because organizations arguably don't have any other career tracks for these people. But if you were to ask about whether they're motivated to lead people, whether they take energy from this and they take pride in the job, it may not always be so. So in the future, I think what we are learning from these organizations is that leadership is really less about doing and more about being a particular way to to inspire people in terms of how we become. The third behavior that we have observed is that leaders connect the heart, the hand, and the head all together. Now, thanks to neuroscience, we now understand the connection we have between our brains, between our hearts, and between our bodies. But this hasn't really translated into the workplace yet. And what we have found with these organizations is that they understood how leaders show up and their behaviors actually have an impact on people's psychology as well as their physiology. And I think similarly, in the future, we have to care about not only feeding people's mental capacities, but providing more holistic experiences for our employees. The fourth behavior is that leaders lead for connection. Of course, it's important that leaders understand strategy and strategy execution. But in an environment where value creation and differentiation comes from empathy and creativity, it's equally important that leaders put relationships at the center of their work. And again, inside of the organizations we have studied, we've seen leaders exactly do this. Some of them do it consciously, others do it unconsciously, but they care equally about their people and the relationships that they feed. The last behavior is that leaders lead for growth. Now, in the current environment, I think many of you would agree, a lot of our employees and also leaders are stretched for their mental and emotional capacities. So it becomes even more important for our leaders to understand that growth is a mindset and that our experiences are there for our ongoing learning. So what we found in these organizations is that leaders not only understood this, but they were actually looking for ways to sort of tap and unleash energy in their people in the most creative ways. And similarly, I think we will have to do that in the future. So again, there is an awakening in the workplace, and we really hope that we can invite more of you to join this movement and help us sort of reconnect humanity back to the business. Because we really believe the core purpose of business is serving humanity at large. Now, there's a lot more we can say about human-centered leadership, the mindsets and the attributes also. If you're interested in hearing more, please do give us a feedback. And if not, I thank you again for your time and for watching.